It's time for our regular scheduled programming. We're talking about the NHL standings and how the Vancouver Canucks have kind of lost out on one of these top spots in the NHL. Now, I'm not talking strictly about points or even points percentage. The Canucks are one of the top teams in each of these categories, but what today's video is going to focus on is just a different part of this season, something that the Vancouver Canucks have been first in the entire league for the majority of the season. Now, to help us out with this entire thing, we're going to head over to the Vancouver Canucks and their schedule, because if you take a look at some of these games, you'll see that throughout the big wins they've had, 6-3 over Ottawa, 6-4 New Jersey, 6-3 New York, 5-2 New York, they've been winning a lot. But sprinkled in there throughout these big wins are a few games where the Vancouver Canucks either win by a slim margin or lose by a slim margin. Against the Arizona Coyotes yesterday, 2-1 score, very tight game. Against the Buffalo Sabres last week, 1-0 win. Against the St. Louis Blues 2 weeks ago, 2-1 loss in regulation. Meanwhile, if you go over to the December period, you'll see that there were a few games that were kind of like that. 2-1 shootout loss against the Minnesota Wild, 2-0 win over the Minnesota Wild, the same Minnesota Wild team. But for the most part, the Vancouver Canucks have been a pretty good team when it comes to scoring goals, and that has been a pretty big indicament of their standings in the NHL goal-scoring race. Well, as recently as a few days ago when the Colorado Avalanche had a 7-4 win over the Ottawa Senators, the Vancouver Canucks ended up losing their top spot in total goals. They now have 170 versus the Avalanche, who have 172. Now, goals per game is slightly skewed into Vancouver's favor. In fact, Vancouver is still number one by quite a significant margin. But the Colorado Avalanche have, because of the schedule, they have themselves the most games played out of every team in the NHL, and thus a bigger chance to get more goals. Assuming the Vancouver Canucks don't score 2 goals against the Toronto Maple Leafs tomorrow, the Canucks will have a chance to challenge, if not overtake, Colorado in this spot. Now, as we had said, Colorado has been going out there with a bunch of multi-goal games as of late. They don't have the same 2-1, 1-0 schedule that the Vancouver Canucks have had sprinkled in there, but Colorado has been really stacking everything up and putting balls to the wall because their top line is just so gosh darn dominant, and it's kind of unfortunate because the rest of the lineup doesn't really do anything. It's just really a one-line team over there with the Avs. But they are good enough to be number one in goals for in the NHL at the time of recording this audio. Now, the best part about Vancouver being in this spot is their goals against number is still one of the best. They are top 5 in the NHL for goals against. Now, Winnipeg having only 99 is just so crazy. Connor Hellebuyck has been fantastic, and the defense in front of them have been blocking shots and making good plays as well. They've just been such a strong defensive team, and so they're number one in the NHL in goals against by quite a long shot. Vancouver is in a pretty close group with LA, Pittsburgh, and Florida, not to mention Boston is right in there too. But the Canucks, of course, having the most goals out of all of these teams makes things very interesting when you talk about goal differential, because Vancouver is still number one in this metric, plus 55 on the season. And when you take a look at the games that they're winning and losing, it's easy to see why. They barely lose games by more than 1 goal. That Philadelphia Flyers game, 4-1, that's the only example, really, that we can see that's happened lately. The loss against Dallas, that was a 1-goal game in overtime. The loss against Minnesota, 2-1 in the shootout. The loss against New Jersey, 1-goal game. Then if you go over to January, 2-1 loss. That was a really tight one to the St. Louis Blues. 4-3 loss against the Columbus Blue Jackets in a shootout, literally a 1-goal loss over there, and then all the other games, they're winning by quite a lot, or they're winning quite barely. The Vancouver Canucks have been just such a good, disciplined team when it comes to keeping the puck out of their own end and making sure that they're capable to capitalize on their chances. Their PDO has been so high this season because of these factors. Now, what this means when you're heading to the NHL standings, of course, like most of these teams are roughly around the plus 20, plus 15 mark. If you're plus 20, you're considered like good. That's pretty all right for goal differential numbers. But being in the plus 30, 40, or 50 category, like only Boston, Vancouver, and Winnipeg are, it sets them in a league of their own. The Vancouver Canucks have been so disciplined in making sure that they don't let games get away for their opponents. It's only really that Philadelphia game that's happened in the past 2 months where we saw that out of the Vancouver Canucks. And because of this consistency, we have ourselves stats like this one getting published on the Vancouver Sun by Patrick Johnson. Take a look at this. The Canucks are the only NHL team that hasn't lost 3 games in a row. Consistency has been the name of the game for the Vancouver Canucks this season. And this is something that we saw in the same graph here. Taking a look at the calendar, I mean, every loss is followed up by a win. Every tight game is followed up by a dominant game afterwards. 4-3 loss against the Dallas Stars in overtime, 7-4 stomping of the Sharks after that. 4-1 embarrassing loss to the Philadelphia Flyers. And then you have yourselves the 6-3 win against the Ottawa Senators. 2-1 loss against the Blues is followed up quickly by the Canucks' first win in New Jersey in forever, and then you have the winning streak. The loss against Columbus, as we had said, that one was fine. Like, I made the video before the Columbus game began and said, yeah, like, the Canucks could very well lose this one because of their travel plans and because everything is so tight. If they lose against the Blue Jackets, it's okay. But they rebounded with a 2-1 win, a very close win yesterday against the Arizona Coyotes. This Vancouver Canucks team has been sort of the epitome of consistency and defensive coverage, especially in games where everything is tight, even when they're not able to get things going offensively. Like yesterday, that Arizona game, you could say it was Connor Ingram showing up and making good plays, and the Canucks also missing the net on their power play opportunities. There's a lot going on here with the Vancouver Canucks to be happy with, because even when they have those off nights, you'll see that many of the other guys hold the rest of the team accountable and make sure that their own side of the play is up to snuff. Thatcher Demko is part of the reason the Vancouver Canucks squeaked out of this win with the Arizona Coyotes 2-1. Same thing could be said about the Buffalo game 1-0. That was such a tight game, and the Vancouver Canucks just could not get things going offensively. Admittedly, this is not the only thing that the Vancouver Canucks have lost out on this season in talking about the goals for number being no longer number 1. We had seen over the course of the year different guys battling it out for that number 1 point producing spot. We had seen Miller, Pettersson, and Hughes tied for first overall in the NHL in points at some point throughout the season, but now, because the scoring has been kind of diversified, you've got more third-line guys getting involved, you've got extra names putting themselves up on the score sheet, you're no longer relying only on Miller, Pettersson, and Quinn Hughes, who is still tied for number 1 in points by a defenseman, but who is there with Cale Makar. You have these guys that are no longer near the top of the overall points race because Nikita Kucherov and McKinnon just decided that they wanted to go absolutely off. I mean, Miller and Pettersson, they're all over here. Quinn Hughes is at 53. At one point, they were all tied for number 1. I don't think JT Miller is going to make up the 14-point differential to catch up to Nikita Kucherov anytime soon, but that's just me. Either way, the rest of the lineup is showing up to score in great ways, and it's reflecting really well on the score sheet. So let me know your thoughts on the Vancouver Canucks and the standings watch. We're just kind of taking a look at everything going around, analyzing this team as we see fit, and honestly, I think they're doing a pretty good job. It's hard to argue with being first overall in the entire gosh darn National Hockey League, right? So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about the Vancouver Canucks and their metrics, some of these numbers, some of the things that they have lost out on in terms of being first, and how quickly they'll be able to regain that. Assuming, of course, they're able to score goals against the Toronto Maple Leafs tomorrow. But for now, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about the Vancouver Canucks and their performance. I hope you enjoyed this video, and bye.